Mew under the truck. L is real 2401. Sonic games are fun. They just don't make video game myths like they used to. I'm kidding, I just needed something to say for the third one. If you're a little younger than me, you still may have grown up with a bit more modern video game mythology, like Herobrine in Minecraft, or I'm assuming some sort of ritualistic satanic dance in Fortnite. But I feel like the potential for a general air of unsubstantiated mystery in games definitely peaked in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s. I'm sure there was some sick folklore in games before my time too, like the fabled secret stage in Pong, but I think the height of playground rumors and hearsay aligns with video games getting a bit more complex, but before the internet was able to catch up in accessibility and complexity itself. Unfortunately, there weren't too many kids in my grade who were into Kingdom Hearts like I was. I mean, sure, some of them played it, but they didn't treat it like one of the 5 basic food groups, which I found to be bizarre. So while I didn't hear any rumblings of KH-related secrets beneath the monkey bars or near the cubbies, I did have the luxury and or curse of growing up alongside a juvenile internet. See, my parents were cool, and I got to experience the internet unsupervised as young as age 7 or 8. I know for the older members of my audience, 2004 or so might not seem like the true Wild West era of the internet that you have fond memories of, but hey, it was still pre-YouTube, that's gotta count for something. Now, while I've long documented how my first exposure to Kingdom Hearts 1 was through a shared and prolonged playthrough with my cousins throughout 2002 and 3, I still definitely returned to the game on my own in the years that followed, even beyond the release of KH2. I sort of still do that, like a lot. But instead of being accompanied by family members and a strategy guide, subsequent playthroughs of KH1 were supplemented with ravenous binges of internet content. When I realized there were millions of people out there who also loved this game, sharing a vast ocean of information with each other, an ocean that in retrospect looks like a puddle when compared to 2022, I wanted to read any and everything I could about it. I devoured GameFAQs message board topics like they were novels, and somehow I managed to walk away with an unfried brain. Or maybe a totally fried brain given what I do for a living at this moment in time. The jury is still out on that. Now, not to suggest that honesty and clarity on the internet has increased as it's aged. If anything, that line on a bar graph probably dips and rises quite a few times over the past 20 years, and we're definitely not at the highest point on that graph right now. But if you could believe it, it at least seemed even easier back then to just say whatever you wanted, wherever you wanted, without any verifiable citations or research to back it up. So naturally, I was bound to come across some such claims when perusing the KH1 message boards on my family's chunky computer on Friday nights. The subject of this video is something I remember reading in now long defunct or deleted message board posts, but the memory of it had gone completely dormant until I just so happened to come across it again a few months ago, this time on TV tropes. And for the uninitiated, if you haven't checked out TV tropes, I recommend going into a cave and looking up every piece of media you've ever consumed and not leaving said cave until you've read everything there is on the topic. I have lost months to this website. I realized that Kingdom Hearts had a couple of supplementary pages alongside its main ones, so I was browsing those. And at the very top of the page entitled Wake Up Call Bosses, I unearthed this piece of folklore that I had long forgotten. Riku on Destiny Islands is very fast and strong for that part of the game, has a brutal counterattack, and can serve as a challenge even for those who already beat the game. Losing to him in the duel has no effect on the story, and losing to him in the race will cause the default gummy ship to be named the Highwind instead of what you chose to name the raft. Everything there checks out so far. Defeating him in the duel provides you with a potion, but it's not recommended to defeat him because defeating him on Destiny Islands, and this next part is spoiler tagged, changes his coding when you fight him for the first time in Hollow Bastion, making him much more difficult than usual. So upon reading this, I had a total brain blast back to when I originally saw this in the mid-aughts. In handfuls of fresh playthroughs that more often than not didn't even make it to Hollow Bastion, I purposefully avoided dueling with Riku and definitely didn't try to beat him lest I risk a tougher boss fight after the my friends are my power moment. Because why wouldn't you believe that when you're like 7 or 8? It changes his coding, for God's sake. And I mean, I believed anything at that age. I have a traumatic memory of my cousin telling me that I would die by age 20 if I continued to eat kid cuisines at the rate that I did. Now I'm 25 and I eat 17 kid cuisines a day and I'm like, what gives? What the fuck's going on? I was impressionable. And not only was I not good enough at the game or savvy enough to look into confirming or busting this myth, I straight up didn't even conceive that it might be mythological at all. It just made sense. You beat Riku once and it pisses off his ones and zeros so bad that he's harder to beat later. Luckily, I'm a bit better at the game now than I was back then and a lot more skeptical, which brings us to our little experiment today. And the experiment is relatively simple if somewhat arduous. But basically, we're taking two save files, one where I beat Riku on Destiny Islands and one where I lose to him, and then comparing the battles I have with him in the entrance hall several hours later. While definitely less of an undertaking for my current self than my kid self, it's still as annoying of a process as it sounds. It essentially means playing through the game twice, only really being able to skip the first few dive to the heart platforms on the second run. But this seemed like the most obvious and straightforward way to test it. For these files, I went for the most basic vanilla experience I could. I started both runs on standard and picked the sword and dropped the shield for both. On file 1, I beat Riku in the duel on the first day. Just to be safe, I also made sure to beat him in the race on the second day, making for a final score of 2-0 in favor of Sora heading into the apocalypse. From there, I played through the game normally, although avoiding as many optional encounters as possible to keep the experience gained between the files relatively the same. With that in mind, I skipped Olympus Coliseum in Atlantica and arrived in Hollow Bastion at level 33, freshly becoming level 34 before the first fight with Dark Pajama Riku. But before engaging, I loaded up an early copy of this file that I made at the Awakening save point and did it all over again, this time with one early but important distinction. I made sure to lose the duel with Riku. In fact, I even left the log collectible laying there to make it more likely that Sora would trip over it and sprain his ankle. And then I made it a point to lose to Riku in the race, giving us a score of 0-2 for Riku, and hypothetically handing us an easier route to payback when we arrive in Hollow Bastion. Q playing through almost the entire game again and arriving at Rising Falls, level 33, reaching level 34 right before proceeding through the castle gates. And so here's our moment of truth. I unequipped every accessory I had, going into both fights with the same stats, having not used any boost items in either run, as well as the Pumpkinhead keychain for both. I decided to start with the Lost to Riku file. I fought Riku, taking note of the experience, and then soft reset upon beating him because I don't need this file anymore. Then I loaded up the file where I beat Riku and did the same. Now, I started this project knowing that one of the possible results is a lot sexier than the other. I would have loved to tell you that I finally obtained proof and can validate this age-old, oft-repeated claim, but I am instead here to report what's behind the plainly unsexy door number 2. This has been a crock of shit ever since the first time someone typed it up. So while our end result here isn't revelatory, it's at least declarative. Nothing about the way Riku is fought seems to be any different between the two files. In fact, if anything, my first battle with him felt more aggressive despite it being on the file where I lost to him, which is the inverse of the myth. In actuality, I probably just felt that because it was the first of the two tests and I was still getting warmed up. But Riku's attacks are the same, and the rate at which he performs them is unchanged. He still annoyingly retaliates on the third hit, making it difficult to reliably combo him, and cementing this fight as pretty unfun regardless of what happened on Destiny Islands. I compared both the damage I dealt to Riku and the damage he dealt to me, and with both Sora's stats being exactly the same, with the only variable being whether or not our island score was higher or lower, I was not able to determine any difference. To make absolutely sure, my friend Samuel Camel checked Riku's stats in both scenarios and also found no difference. These numbers are also exactly the same, unchanged by what happens on Destiny Islands. And just for the sake of thoroughness, he also checked Riku and some stats, and those are also the same regardless of what happens in the duels. And fun fact, Riku 1 and Riku 2's attack and defense are also exactly the same to each other in both scenarios. Riku 2 just has more HP and a slightly higher rate of MP recovery when you hit him. So, there you have it. I'm not sure how many of you even heard of this myth prior to this video, but regardless, I'm happy to have finally put it to bed. And sure, reading the premise may have had you scoffing in the first place, but if any game was going to try and pull something like this off, it would be the first Kingdom Hearts. If anything, this should serve as an example of why you can't just trust anything you read on the internet. And I mean that in general, but you know, most importantly when it comes to Kingdom Hearts. The series is no stranger to straight up falsehoods being peddled as fact, like Sora being able to wield the Keyblade because of Ventus, nobody's being immune to aging, or that Nomura wrote Recoded while he was drunk, all of which is a load of bunk. At the very least, I hope you enjoyed the little walk down the memory lanes between as I investigated this very specific and ultimately inconsequential aspect of a game that I've been hyperfixated on for the past 2 decades. Happy ending, I guess?